Hello, I'm Mike Dudley. I'm going to talk now about how to batch a sample, mix it, and compact it as part of the mix design process. What I have laid out here in front of me, I've got my scale, my pan where I'm going to weigh my sample up, and I got some pans here with all my individual aggregate. You can consider this as your individual stockpiles that you're going to be batching on a mini scale here in the lab. I will point out these nice blue pans that we have. I really like these pans because they're large enough bottom that they allow me to keep my material spread out in a nice uniform way and not segregated. Also, I point out a couple of our scoops here. This scoop is a cast aluminum scoop, and as you can tell by looking at it, it's used when we work with the mix rather than the aggregate. This is a scoop I'm going to be using while I batch the pills, and as you can see, this one's never had asphalt on it. That's actually very important when you're scooping your materials. You don't want anything to stick to this. And I also like the fact that this metal of this scoop is a thin metal, where the cast aluminum scoops is a much thicker metal and can allow fines when I'm doing my scooping to fall below it. So I think it's important to have the right equipment when we're batching our samples. All right, to get started, we would have already covered in the classroom section how we calculated our batch weights. Okay, so I've got those weights right here, and you would have already covered that in the classroom. We're going to batch now an SM12.5A mix with wrap. We are including wrap. And to get started with, what I like to have is a good reasonable size pan, large enough that I can keep each material separate as I'm adding it to the pan. What is the reason for that? If I put too much in, I'm pulling out the right material, and I'm not pulling out material from a different pan, okay? So I've placed my pan here on a scale, I've tared it off. Like I said, flat bottom scoop, nice clean flat bottom pans. First material I'm going to weigh up is a number 78 coarse aggregate. All right, come over here, I put my scoop flat on the metal of the pan, and I proceed forward just like a loader bucket would do at your plant when he's loading your plant, and I lift up. Come over here, my weight that I'm targeting is 536 grams. I'm going to place that in one corner. First one, 550, went over a little bit, but I'm able to remove just this material. 536, all right? I return this material back to the same pan, and I go to my next pan, which is going to be a number 8 material. For the number 8, 20%, I'm going to add 975 grams. Again, flat bottom scoop, flat on the pan, scoop forward, just like a loader bucket would do at your plant, and I said 975 grams. All right, I'm going to tare my initial weight before I add this weight. If you prefer to do running weights, either way, it's your call, however you want to do this when you're batching your own samples. You obviously have to calculate individual weights, but some people I know like to add them together to get a running weight, but that's your call. I'm going to tear it off in between. So I tear this, and like I said, 975 grams is being added. And again, different portion of my pan, so that if I overrun, I'm only removing this material. Slightly over. $975 grams. Return my material back to the same pan. Next material I'm going to be adding is a natural sand. Again, flat bottom scoop, forward, and I'm going to again tear off my pan. And this, for natural sand, I need to add 780 grams of material. I'm going to start in this corner with this material. 780 grams. All right, next material I'll be adding is my manufactured sand. Again, flat on the bottom, scoop forward, tear it off before I add any weight. And this time I'm going to add 1,073 grams. Different corner. $1,073. All right. Next, what I'm batching up in this pan is just my virgin aggregate. And we've applied all the aggregate that we would get out of our cold feed bins. But there's one more virgin aggregate I want to add to this before I move on to my wrap, which I'll batch in a separate pan, and that's baghouse fines. Baghouse fines for this particular mix, we know from our plant that we have about 1% breakdown. So these baghouse fines is to simulate during the design process what's going to happen when we're designing through the plant, the breakdown we're going to get. Got a little. I'm going to use a little spoon for this. I'm going to tear it off again. And for my baghouse, I need to add 49 grams for 1%. And I'm going to add that right in the middle of the pan. All right, 49 grams. Now, this is all my virgin aggregate. Again, we have not messed with the wrap yet. This is a wrap design we're batching. But before I do that, I want to confirm my total weight on my virgin aggregates. So to do that, I need to get a clean pan. I'm going to lift this up and just set it over to the side. Grab a clean pan. Put that on my scale, zero it out. Okay? Now, this total combined virgin aggregate weight should weigh 3,413 grams. I'm going to check that I've batched this correctly. I got 3,413.6. That's pretty good. Before I add this material to the oven now, what I want to do is mix it up real good. This is the virgin aggregate. Just take a scoop, a spoon, and mix up your aggregate. Just to help when you start the mixing process, all your aggregate will already be mixed up. I like to mix it up nice and this virgin aggregate now needs to go into an oven to come up to temperature before we can do our mixing. This is where people need to have 3 ovens to do a mix design. One oven is for your binder mixing temperature. This is an SM12.5A mix. The A tells us that it's a PG6422 binder. The mixing temperature for a PG6422 is between 300 and 310 Fahrenheit. Okay? Now, compaction, which is a whole different temperature for a PG6422, is between 285 and 290. So now we got 2 different temperatures already. Why do we need a 3rd oven? Because our virgin aggregate can be placed in an oven 50 degrees above our binder mixing temperature. So if this is at 300 to 310, we can, if we're going to mix at 300 to 310, we can place our virgin aggregate at 350 to 360 Fahrenheit. That makes it considerably easier when we're trying to coat the aggregate with the binder for mixing. So that's where this virgin sample is going to go now, is in our hot oven. But we're not done batching the sample yet, because if you remember, when we started, I said we would be batching a wrap mix design. We haven't dealt with the wrap yet. Reason we haven't dealt with the wrap yet is the wrap can't go in that hot oven the entire time. That aggregate sample is going to take an hour or two to get up to temp, and you can't put wrap in for that long. So we have to have a separate pan for our wrap. Again, clean pan. Place it on our scale, tear it out. Using the same scoop, got our wrap in a pan. We're going to batch our wrap weight in a separate pan. 30% wrap for this mix requires 1,539 grams. Again, flat scoop, flat pan. $1,539 grams, slightly over, 41, 1,539. Okay. The reason we batch our wrap separately is we'll set this beside the oven. The wrap can be added to our virgin aggregate 30 minutes prior to time you're going to be mixing. So we just set this wrap on the side, on top of the oven for now, until we get ready to actually do our mixing. And that will do it for the batching part of this presentation. Okay, now that our virgin aggregate has been in the oven for an hour or so and came up to mixing temperature, we want to add the wrap that you remember we batched separately to this virgin aggregate so it has time to heat up. All you do for that is add it to the top of your pan. Take a spatula and mix it in. Just trying to get everything mixed up before we add the binder and start mixing. Looks good. Now this will go back in the oven at the mixing temperature for an additional 30 minutes so the wrap has time to come up to temp prior to mixing. Now that our aggregate is at temperature and our liquid is at temperature and we're ready to mix, first thing you want to do is put your mixing bowl, your mixing bucket on your scale, tear it off. Grab your sample, and to recap, this sample, the virgin aggregate and the wrap, has been in the 350-degree oven for 30 minutes. So now we're ready to add our liquid and mix the sample up. Do that, we add all this to the bucket. All right, before we add any liquid, we want to create a little pocket to pour our liquid in. In case we overrun, we want to be able to get a little bit out. Zero that off. And our virgin aggregate weight, virgin binder weight is 130 grams. So here we go. .567. Ooh. And which often happens, I'm over by about a gram. Only way to get it out is to bail it out. There we are. Our sample, our bucket goes on the mixer. We have to add our mixing rod here and turn it on. Once you've turned it on, you need to start a 1-minute timer. Specification requires your sample mix for a minimum of 1 minute. While this is mixing, I'm gonna put everything back in the oven. You can also add some heat while it's mixing. That helps to prevent the fines from sticking to the side. All right, we've mixed for 1 minute. The sample looks nice and mixed. Stop our mixer. Grab our pan to add our sample to. Make sure it's clean. I usually clean off this part first. Quick thing. Now for the bucket. Very important we get everything out. Scrape the bucket nice and clean. Like that. I want to spread this sample out. Nice and uniform. And this sample needs to go into our compaction temperature oven for 2 hours prior to compaction. Again, for an SM12.5A, that compaction temperature will be between 285 and 290 Fahrenheit. That's why I have this oven over here. And typically what I would do at this time for the 2-hour recording is I'll write down what time it is off my watch and know in 2 hours I need to compact that. All right, once our 2-hour conditioning time is up, we want to compact our sample. To do that, we need to get our mold, which is hot, at compaction temperature. Add my paper disc to the bottom, my funnel on top, and here's my sample. To add my sample to the mold, I use this curved pan here. I want to carefully transfer my mix, my sample. It's important to get everything out. 2 little pieces spilt this in, and 1 on this end. All right, now I'm going to transfer it into the mold. It needs to be transferred in one lift, in one motion. Okay, remove my funnel. And then you just level your specimen off. You are not compacting at all. All you're doing here is leveling the top of your sample. Once that's done, you add another paper disc to the top, and you go to your compactor. Take our specimen in the mold to our compactor, load it in. Gyratory is already set for 50 gyrations, required by specification. Press start. Gyratory applies the angle, begins compaction. Once the gyratory is finished its 50 gyrations, it stops automatically. All you have to do is remove the top plate. And extract your sample. You transfer your sample in front of a fan, take it off the base plate, let it sit here, remove the disc. You need to allow your specimen to cool to room temperature prior to weighing it, bulking it, and calculating your volumetric properties.